Hello, it's Nadia, and this is She Builds Again. And today I'm going to be talking about something that is so important if you're ever thinking, imagining, dreaming, planning about relocating, and that is getting the finances in order before you move. And so, if you have kids and a husband, especially, you will want to have your eggs in a basket, you will want to have your financial planning done before you move so that if anything arises that you did not expect, that you have the money to cover it, that you don't have the anxiety and the worry and the stress because you have thought of most of the scenarios possible when it comes to relocating. And if you don't know me yet, my name is Nadia, and I was 35 years old when I moved from our small island home in Bermuda to Bali, Indonesia with my family. And so my husband and I had been married around 8 years by that point. My son was 3 years old, and we have since had another daughter, Zoe, who is 2. And so she was born here in Bali. And so we've been here for the last 3.5 years, learning the ups and downs, the highs and lows of relocating. And we've gone through the honeymoon phase where everything is exciting and fun. And we've also journeyed through the realistic phase where you start to notice the hiccups and the challenges and the lessons in just life in a different country, life in a country that is far away from home, from family, and you're doing it on your own, but you're making it work because that's life, and you have all the skills you need to make your dreams come true and to try something new and to challenge yourself. And so this episode is all about the finances because it's such an important piece that if you have kids, if you have a family, a partner, you do not want to just skip this and do it ad hoc or on a whim. When I was in my 20s, I left my job twice, and both times I had maybe around $20,000 saved, which I thought was a lot at that time. But with kids, I feel like you need to be even just a little bit more cautious, a little bit more prepared. And so that's what me and my husband decided to do. We actually had a very aggressive goal, and we wanted to have at least $100,000 in the bank before we moved. And so that has actually carried us through many highs and lows that we've encountered since we relocated to Bali. I've run my business for the last few years, but last year, because of AI, my business took a significant dip. And so because of that, I still do occasional work, but I had to pivot. I've had to give myself some time to think about what's next and to figure out a plan B or C or D. And so you'll want that nest egg of money, that safety net, so that if anything comes up in this world, if you get fired from your job, if one of you gets sick, that you have money to just carry you through for a few months, maybe even a year, so that you are okay. You can take a breath, your nervous system can relax, and you don't have to have that pressure of survival mode on your shoulders, because that is so intense to carry, especially when you have kids, maybe 1 or 2 kids or more. You need to just have that bit of reassurance, that peace of mind. And so I'm going to be giving in this episode just a few of my tips, things that worked for me and my husband. Obviously, there are many, many different things that could work. I am not a financial expert, but I have always been someone who is frugal and has try to save as much as possible, and I really do believe that money in the bank or money in your investments equals freedom and equals choices. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, just sharing a few of the things that worked for us. And obviously, if you know of a money expert, if you follow Dave Ramsey, if you know of anyone, I actually have a friend who does something similar. So shout out to Nicole Knight. But if you know anyone that actually has the financial savvy to walk you through this, that's also a great option. But these are just the tips and things that worked for us as a family. And so the first thing that I'm going to talk about is dividing and conquering. And so for my husband, once we decided on this very aggressive savings goal that we worked toward around 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, and during COVID, we decided that we were gonna figure out our strengths and work to those. And so my strength has always been, I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to live extremely simply and almost to the point of deprivation for a short period in order to meet a goal. And so I was willing to do that. I was willing to save every single penny of what I made outside of money that had to go to rent and food and some basic essentials for my life. And I saved aggressively for those 2.5 years. And so my husband, on the flip side, he's not so good with saving. He's never had the opportunity to save because he's always lived paycheck to paycheck. He has a mortgage. He's had other big financial responsibilities, and he's just not used to saving. So we decided that he would cover most of our expenses. So he covered things like health insurance for us. He covered things like nursery school for our son. He covered things like gas money and the bulk of the groceries. And because he was willing to do that, I was able to just focus on saving. And so that divide and conquer mentality really, really worked for us because we do have such different financial personalities, financial beliefs, financial strengths and weaknesses. And so for us, that for sure helped us to get on the same page, get focused on the same goal, and work in different ways to get there. And so another thing is working together. And so in the past, we had never worked together financially. I know that all the experts say you should have a joint bank account. We never did that. And it's mostly because of me. I didn't feel comfortable with that because most of my husband's income was going toward a mortgage and a shared property with his mother and his brother. And I felt like that had nothing to do with me. And so for the most part, I would save my money. We would share expenses when it came to rent for the place that we lived at. But I would spend money on things like travel. I would pay for his tickets. I would make sure we had hotels and things like that. Whereas when we decided on this shared goal of relocating, and we finally got on the same page about deciding to move overseas, we finally were working as a team and not as two separate entities. And so we had to have honest conversations about what we were making. We had to have honest conversations about maybe challenges that we had or any unexpected expenses that were coming up. And so we had to start talking about finances, which is something that was very, very new for us as a couple. And obviously we've had time since then to get better at it. But back then it was something we had not done before. And so that's definitely where my kind of selfish financial priorities came in. But for a while it worked for us, and then eventually it didn't. And when we decided on a shared goal, we had to work together. We had to pool our resources and to humble myself. And so anyways, working together for us helped. And so that was new for us. And thankfully, it helped us to get on the same page, to talk about finances more, and to figure out how we were going to move forward every year and get closer to our goal. Another thing that really helped us was having a stretch goal. And so when my husband told me that he wanted to save $100,000 for this move, I thought to myself, you're crazy. And I thought that because I had never saved that much before. I had only ever saved $20,000, maybe $25,000, I think, around that. And I just felt like that was like my upper limit. That was the most I could imagine saving. And so to have this stretch goal that pushed me to save more aggressively and save more of my money, that was challenging, but also really liberating, because now I feel like my stretch goal and my upper limit has increased, which is kind of cool. I feel like we have made bigger financial decisions together as a couple, even since relocating. We've bought a property, we bought a different property, we sold that property. And so, yeah, things have just evolved, and we've started to invest in bigger ways together as a family and as a couple. And so, yeah, that stretch goal was crazy. I thought it was impossible, but somehow we got to it. And somehow I really do believe that if you challenge yourself, you can do things that are hard. And so that was what the reality was for us. And it's funny because it was actually during COVID, and the first year of COVID, 2020, I remember my business income took a slight dip. And so maybe I was making like $80,000 a year before, and then it went down to 70 something. And it was because I had 2 contracts at that time They were both asking for deadlines, these clients, at the same time. They were both pressuring me to get things done. And I had my 18-month-old son home with me, and my husband had just started a new job. And so we had prioritized him focusing on his job, whereas I had to balance my client workload with taking care of our baby. And I only kind of had like nap times to kind of like type on my laptop and get things in, and my focus was all over the place, and there was lots of uncertainty. My mental health was kind of up and down. And so because of that, I had to say no to one of the clients that I was working with, the smaller of the two. And that was kind of necessary because they were putting some pressures on me, and I couldn't handle the stress and the pressure. I just couldn't. I had to like politely walk away, and I said that they didn't have to pay me for any of the work that I had done so far, which, but at the end of the day, I at least felt like I was staying true to myself, and I was focusing on one client and trying to do a good job with them. And that client ended up lasting for a few years, whereas that other smaller client would have just been a 3-month project. So I'm glad that I made the call that I did. But it meant that our income was smaller, it was uncertain. And then thankfully, and I'll go into this in the next point, we had 2 good years of income with my business. And so that brings me to another thing that worked for us, which is tithing. And so I, especially in the past, have had a hard time with tithing. The thought of giving away 10% of my income, of my revenue, when things are so uncertain as an entrepreneur, oh my gosh, it has really been challenging for me at times. But I think it's also allowed me to put my faith to the test. And I'm really happy to say that, like I said, when I did tithe, I specifically tithed those last 2 years. And I did something that I've never done before. I didn't just tithe after making money. Okay, so I made $6,000 this month. I'm going to tithe $600. I tithed for the full year in January of what I wanted to make. So my desire was to make close to 6 figures. So I tithed a full $10,000 at the beginning of the year, and had to just trust and pray and hope and wish and surrender and submit and see what God had in store. And both of those 2 years that I did that, God opened doors. God presented me with these short-term government contracts that I was able to do within maybe 6 months on one, and around 6 months on the other as well. And they were just such a great source of income because I was able to balance that with my other client load. I just felt like God was really, really providing for me. And if you have that opportunity, if you have that cash that you're able to tithe at the beginning of the year, it works. So I don't know what happens when you do that in terms of the spiritual, financial side, but God really just opened doors, and it was literally automatic. Like I would be scared to do it, worrying about doing it, stressing about doing it, feeling like I'm not sure if God's going to come through, doubting, because that's kind of been my pattern with faith. But I would do it, and within a matter of weeks, a door would open. And in my experience, I've tried to get clients proactively. I've sent them emails. I've done cold calls or cold emails to different clients telling them I'd love to meet. This is how I can help you. This is how I can support your business. And never, literally like probably 0.01% of the time that has worked. But when I have just trusted in God and surrendered, someone comes to me that I'm not looking. I've not sent them an email. I didn't even know the job was looking for someone. And someone has sent me an email like, hi, are you willing to submit this RFP for this project? We are looking for someone. I send in a quick RFP, not even putting that much detail into it. And they're like, yes, let's meet. Yes, it's done. Yes, send your invoice. It's just so much easier. It's crazy how it works. And those are the things that came into play in our last few years in Bermuda before we relocated, and when we were working toward that aggressive financial goal. And like I said, I don't know how it works. I really don't. But I have realized that when you trust God with the finances, when you trust for Him to provide, for Him to open doors, and when you stop hustling and stop trying to force things and stop trying to push things, and especially as women, I feel like we are designed to be soft. That is God's design for us. And so many of us have, because of survival, because of single parent households, because of, the corporate America and this dual income household situation, many of us have had to put on the pants, and we've had to hustle, and we've had to just be more aggressive and try to get opportunities and force opportunities and try to kick doors down. And for me, at least, and I can't speak for everyone because I know that there are women that are far more successful than me in a corporate setting. But for me, that just never worked. When I tried to force things, when I tried to do it in my strength and my capacity, when I tried to brag about the awards that we won, nothing worked. And then when I wasn't looking, someone would message me. God would open a door, and it would happen quickly, easily, no stress. I would just be with people that were easy to work with, other God-fearing people. Like, God does it. So I think that's it for this episode. Like I said, there are definitely financial strategies if you have debt to pay off, if you have different investment accounts that you want to look into. I am not that kind of gal. I don't know enough about finances to advise you, but I just wanted to share some of the spiritual mindset, financial strategies that myself and my husband use to actually help us with that big savings goal in order to relocate. And so I hope that this episode was useful and helpful. And if you have any questions, just let me know. And if you are not yet subscribed, I ask you for that big favor to subscribe, because I am a new channel and I am hoping that I connect with the right people who are faith-minded, people who desire to achieve big goals and big dreams. And if you're especially looking to relocate, then I'm your girl. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in another episode.